Hey guys, so we are continuing with Extra History's Catherine the Great series. This is the second part, and it's titled Not Quite Empress Yet. So I'm really looking forward to getting into the marriage between Catherine and Peter. And I think this video, if we might be getting into it, or at least the next one, but I am finding that dynamic very interesting. There's a show about it. I mean, it's not historically accurate by any means, but it's meant to be more of a comedy. But there's this show called The Great, and it stars one of the Fanning sisters. I forget, but the actor named Nicholas Holt, and it's like supposed to be about like Catherine the Great and her marriage to Peter. It's meant to be a comedy, so if you're going, I would not recommend going into it with like a looking for historical accuracy, but it is a funny show, so I'd recommend just to enjoy it, and I think you would. But that's why I'm kind of interested in seeing their dynamic here, and exactly how Catherine rises to power. So, before I jump into this video, I just want to say the original link to this video is down in the description down below. Feel free to check out Extra History without my yapping here. And, if you enjoy my content and want to help me out in any way, shape, or form, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and maybe consider joining, like, becoming a Patreon or YouTube member. It would really help out my very small but humble channel out, and I would appreciate it very much. Now, with that said, and now without any further ado, we ought to get into it. Let us watch Catherine the Great, Part 2, Not Quite Empress Yet, by Extra History.
Two carriages strain against the muck and mud of the Eastern European plains. Inside, a girl and her mother sit, traveling incognito, under assumed names. Each day takes them closer to Russia. Each day takes them closer to destiny. For the first time in her life, Sophia was celebrated as someone special. Upon her arrival in Russia, the local fort fired its guns in her honor. People whispered of her presence as her sleighs chased the court from the Winter Palace to Moscow.
Wow.
When they caught up with Elizabeth's court, they were greeted by ministers, and then, to Sophia's delight, Peter himself. His fish-like appearance, nervous disposition, and his tendency to babble had not abated at all since they met when she was 10, but he was enthusiastic to see her, and her heart soared at the prospect of such a regal match. Then they were led in to see the Empress. Sophia was overwhelmed by the dazzling splendor. Never in her life had she seen such majesty. And so the ensuing days passed with her at Peter's side, and with each passing day she learned a little bit more about how boorish and unconcerned with his position Peter was. He told her about how much he loathed Russia. He barely even spoke the language. Instead,
Oh, that's a bad start already. Considering that, I think, like, yeah, Peter becomes Tsar, right? So, like, man, I hate this place. I can't speak it. I forget, why in part 1 was he chosen again? I can't remember. But, we watched it a while back, but... Dang, that's not a good sign.
preferring German in all things. He hated the culture and the religion, planned to remain a Lutheran. He even told her that he did not love her, and rather was in love with someone else, but was resigned to marry her because his aunt wished it.
Wow, okay. At least he's honest. At least he's honest. Oh wow, that sucks.
Meanwhile, Sophia began to realize that it wasn't Peter she had to please, but rather the Empress, Elizabeth. She took rapidly to her study of Russian and the Russian Orthodox faith. This pleased Elizabeth, but Sophia took to her studies almost too much, staying up late at night in the harsh Russian cold to continue her practice. Soon she fell ill. Elizabeth herself rushed to nurse her, but it was pneumonia. Not many survived that disease.
Oh yeah, I've heard of many people, especially when we watch these videos, die to that. Oh dang, I know she survives, right? But like obviously Catherine the Great, but dang, that's quite a feat to survive that.
In those days, and her recovery was made all the more difficult by the doctor's insistence on bloodletting. For weeks she lay at death's door. But as the sickness burned through her, rumor of how she contracted the disease spread. Her love of Russia, for that's how everybody perceived her ardent studies, was made known, and she became beloved, even as she slipped in and out of consciousness. Then came a moment where everyone thought it was the end. Her mother requested a Lutheran priest, but Sophia, with what little strength was in her, asked for an Orthodox priest instead, and rumor of this washed throughout the land.
Dang. Even making big moves while she is literally dying. Dude, that's why she's the great, because she's playing the game. She's like, okay, Peter's not the guy. I gotta win Russia's heart. So, even when she's dying, she's making big moves. I respect the hustle. I respect that. Holy crap.
But even as Sophia's esteem was rising, her mother's came crashing down. Shortly after Sophia recovered, a series of letters that Johanna, Sophia's mother, had sent were intercepted. The King of Prussia had asked her to help him displace the Russian diplomat Bestashev at Elizabeth's court, and at this she failed spectacularly. Vastly underestimating her opponent, she got caught sloppily speaking ill of him, the Queen, and Russia. Elizabeth's ire was intense, and Sophia sat within the
You know, yeah, sending Joanna as kind of like a spy for interception, maybe not the biggest, best plan that old Freddy boy ever came up with. Yeah.
blast radius. A courier burst in on Sophia and Peter while they were playing and told Sophia that she was to pack, that she was to be sent away immediately. Luckily, before her exile, she managed to get a moment with Elizabeth and humble herself before her. Elizabeth's fury abated, and she decided that the child could still marry her nephew. She even allowed Sophia's mother to stay, although her standing at court was greatly diminished. Elizabeth even accelerated things, pushing forward Sophia's formal conversion to Russian Orthodoxy so that the official betrothal could take place. But at the dinner after the betrothal, Johanna exploded in an outburst when she was not seated at the table reserved for royalty, saying that she would not be seated with mere ladies of the court. Elizabeth obliged her and sat her in a totally separate room by herself. With
Yo, her mom is wild, dude. You know what she kind of gives me shades of? Like the stepmother from like Cinderella, except like if she wasn't competent. Because I'll at least give it to the stepmother from Cinderella. She was competent in her like evil, you know, to a degree. So here she's just kind of like flailing around.
Sophia's conversion to Orthodoxy came a new name.
Vulnerabilities across network, cloud.
Hey guys, sorry. But yeah, I did not know about. I thought her name was always Catherine. I know that sounds really stupid now that I'm saying it out loud, but I thought her name was just naturally Catherine. So finding out that like she inherited that name or got the name changed is really cool, actually. I did not know that. That's like been the biggest shock of this entire series to me.
She was rechristened Ekaterina, or as we know her in English, Catherine. After this, Catherine spent her days in the royal life, dancing, attending court, going to balls, simply counting down the days until the wedding. But then tragedy struck. Peter was laid low with smallpox. Catherine waited nervously for news. Eventually, Peter recovered, but he was disfigured, his already batrachian features now marred by the scars of the disease. The first time Catherine looked upon him, she was horrified. But the illness also stirred a resolve in the Empress Elizabeth. The realm needed an heir. There was no time to wait, no time to risk some other horrible malady. And so, Catherine and Peter were married. The affair was grand, full of splendor. Catherine's dress was of the finest make, and she was decked out with jewels. All of the highest and most notable members of the court were there. There was dancing and revelry, and then, at last, the ladies of the court escorted her to her bedchamber. There, not knowing what to do, she waited alone. And she waited. And waited. 2 hours later, Peter showed up, reeking of alcohol, and crashed onto the bed, passing out in an instant. At last, her marriage had freed her from her mother, but now Catherine had a new humiliation and torment. Her husband showed no affection for her, and spent all of his days playing buffoonish children's games, making his servants dress up like soldiers and march around his room. Even when Peter was eventually made to give up such things and sleep in the same room as his wife, rather than be with her, he would wait until dark when their governess was gone, and then take out his toy soldiers and have one of the maids move them across the bed as he...
Oh my gosh. They're both really young though, right, at this point? But like, still though, that's, Eesh. Yeah, his disposition doesn't strike me as the best for Russia, but, that's kind of hilarious. Also, he was a fanboy of Frederick the Great, I think later on. Yeah, that's a big part of why Frederick managed to get Russia off his back during the 7 Years' War, is because Peter was a big fanboy of him, and I think Frederick, like, made him an honorary soldier or something for... Gave him an honorary title for, like, German/Prussian, like, stuff, just to keep him on his side, like, yes, keep, I love the fact that you're my fanboy. So, he seems to kind of be like me, you know, like a big fan of, like, military stuff and learning. Granted, though, I don't have toys that I play with, I just watch YouTube videos about war, but, same principle.
ordered them about. This continued.
Oh gosh, is this gonna be me if I ever get married? I'm just gonna be telling my wife about, like, the great exploits of Frederick the Great. Let me tell you about Napoleon. And then I like, pull up Kings and Generals videos. I'm sorry, the thought made me laugh.
For 7 years. Then Catherine met a rakish young nobleman, far more knowledgeable in the ways of love than she. At first, she resisted his advances, but eventually she gave in. Soon after, she was pregnant. She suffered through 2 horrible miscarriages, and then, finally, a son was born. Whispers abounded as to the son's actual parentage, and though in both looks and temperament he seemed Peter's son, and not any of the young lovers Catherine had taken, the matter would never be settled conclusively. But that didn't really matter, for as far as anyone official was concerned, Russia now had an heir.
Dang. So the kid ain't even Peter's. Is that legit though? Is the entire, like, rest of the Russian, like, monarch line just Peter ain't in it? Wow.
And so life moved apace, with Peter and Catherine living separate lives with separate loves, with their little court outside the halls of power. Then Elizabeth died. All of a sudden, Peter was made emperor, and life changed. In 1762, he took the throne, and one of his first orders was to reverse his aunt's military policies. For years, Russia had struggled in the 7 years.
Yeah, Elizabeth was... When we covered the Frederick the Great series by House of History, Elizabeth hated Frederick. Her and, like, Maria Theresa of Austria, they, like... Frederick was amazing in his ability to get, like, all the most powerful women in Europe to hate him. Like, he was not popular with the ladies. And, yeah, that's why a big part of, like, you know, Elizabeth battled, against Frederick. I even think Frederick called her a whore once. Like, actually, like, called her that. So, yeah, that goes to show you he did not endear himself to these women.
War. That same war that kicked off the American Revolution and, through doing so, eventually led to Bolivar. Russia had exhausted innumerable men and material trying to break the might of Prussian arms. After so many years of fighting, they were on the verge of success. Prussia was nearing utter collapse. Berlin itself was on the verge of falling. But then, Peter offered Prussia peace, giving back everything that had been won by Russian sacrifice and strength of arms. It was the second miracle of the House of Brandenburg. It saved Prussia and Frederick the Great, but it sat ill with the Russian people. It sat even worse with the Russian military and nobility. Catherine was horrified. Peter was more concerned with his title as Duke of Holstein than being Tsar of Russia.
It's true. He kind of established earlier he said he hated Russia, and that he was, like, pro-German. And considering Frederick the Great, obviously another German who's, like, a great military commander, and we've established that Peter's big on the military, it kind of puts into perspective why he liked Frederick more. Because, like, when we watch those videos about the 7 Years' War, it's just, Peter was a fanboy of Frederick, but I'm like, why is he a fanboy? I mean, I just thought he just admired Frederick's skill on the battlefield, and heard about it and decided he wanted to be his fan. But with this extra context, it makes even more sense as to why he wanted to like help Frederick out.
He had just given up on the most important war in the world in order to turn all of Russia's might against Denmark so that he might restore some small claim of the House of Holstein that they'd lost years before. And though some of his domestic policies were progressive and hailed as necessary reforms, for the most part, Catherine watched him blunder from one alienating act to another.
Wow.
Even during the funeral of his own aunt, while Catherine showed herself to be the model of orthodox humility and respect, Peter didn't even make an effort to appear to care about Orthodox customs and made a mockery of Elizabeth's funeral.
Dang.
He would go even further with his contempt for the church, trying to secularize all church property and even demanding that clergy shave their beards. But it really was the campaign in Denmark that doomed him.
Wow.
Such an act, so completely disconnected from the interests of Russia, showing such complete disregard for the honor of the army or even the well-being of its men, was one step too far. And more foolishly still, against the direct counsel of Frederick the Great, the very man who he so admired, and whose peer he now considered himself to be, Peter let this little war pull him away from Moscow, to remove him from the center of power and the court. Soon a plot began to form to replace Peter, and at the center of that plot was his replacement, his wife.
Wow.
Join us next time for a coup.
That was cool. Yeah, I'd love to see just how awful their marriage was and get some context as to like why Peter was falling out of favor with everyone. Overall, yeah, not the guy to be the Tsar, but an interesting character nevertheless. So I'm gonna end the video right here, guys, and tomorrow we'll watch the next part. Bye, everyone.